Hi, my name's Jacquie Forde and I am a reformed self-help addict. I laugh when I say that now, but for most of my life, ever since I was a young woman, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I was very different from everybody else. I was very shy. I didn't like to talk to people I didn't know. I thought everybody else was cleverer than me. I thought everybody else was prettier than me. And I kind of fought my way through life because I wasn't coming from a very, very good space. And what I want to share with you guys is my journey through being a self help addict and why, although I learned a few things, it didn't actually help me become this version of me that you're seeing right now. I guess, I've been a seeker all of my life. I always wanted to know how life worked. I always knew there was more. There always felt as though there was more, and people didn't seem to explain to me what I really, really needed to hear. So I started off my career, I worked as a nurse and then I was a midwife, and I was in a job that I just absolutely adored, being of service to people. I got to see life and parts of life that were difficult and challenging, and parts of life that an 18-year-old just doesn't normally see. But even as a young nurse, as a first year nurse, so I was like 17 and a half, 18, I was too shy to speak to the staff nurse or the doctor or anybody who was in a position of authority over me, because I was so insecure in myself. That's a very, very strange space to find yourself in, but that was my norm. That was normal for me. So I just assumed that everybody else was exactly the same. I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. And I never ever felt the need to put a label on that. And I don't know if that's just something to do with my generation, that we didn't have all these psychological labels that seem to be being applied to people these days. So I was just classed as shy. Whereas nowadays they would say, oh, you have social anxiety or, something like that. But I was just a shy kid. And so I started nursing and I just loved, loved, loved what I was doing. It was just beautiful. But then I would socialize at night time with my friends, and it was fascinating to me that, we were seeing life, really quite difficult parts of life and death and being with people as they died, and, being in theatre when people had parts of them cut off, and, really, really quite horrific stuff for a young person to see. And nobody talked about it. Nobody discussed it. We all developed these very dark senses of humour to help us get through what it was we were doing. We had these really sick senses of humour. So when I would go out to socialise with my friends, that shyness was still there. And one of the ways that I found to not be shy was to drink alcohol. That helped me not be shy. That I felt gave me a kind of confidence that I didn't have naturally. But it also meant that often I would be drunker than I should have been, which didn't end well. I'll say that. It really didn't end well. And maybe in another video I'll tell you some of the escapades of what happened to me when I was too drunk. But I said this before, that was kind of like my norm. That felt normal for me. That's what you did. In essence, I was just looking for a different feeling. I was uncomfortable with the feeling that I was living in, and I was just looking for a different feeling because I didn't understand how I was creating my experience of life. Nobody had taught me. I thought that all the thoughts in my head and everything that was going on was truth. I thought every time a thought popped up, that was information that I needed to act on. I didn't realise that it was just this gorgeous neutral energy that was just flowing through my head that I didn't have to do anything about. So I lived most of my life in that phase where, thought pops into my head, that's something I have to do. Now, I didn't kill anybody. I did have those thoughts at times. I didn't do anything like that. I didn't harm anybody. So somewhere deep inside me, I knew that there were thoughts that felt like I could act on them, and thoughts that I definitely knew were stupid. Okay? And we all have those. Our wisdom keeps us safe. It does. It keeps us safe. So I progressed from working in nursing and moved into the corporate sector. And I worked in sales and marketing and business development and government affairs. So I went from this environment where it was beautiful and everybody was caring about one another to an environment where it was very much dog eat dog and very, very competitive. That's where I went cuckoo. That's where I really lost the plot, because I couldn't understand why people were behaving the way that they were behaving. Now, by saying I went cuckoo, I really meant I just became very insecure. But in that insecurity, I fought through it. I fought through it and held a state of being that was very commanding, very strong, very certain, very successful, but also very exhausting. It's kind of like, if you're shy and you try to pretend that you're not shy and you're hanging out with people and you're doing all these things, then all of a sudden you finish socializing and then you go home and you're just exhausted. That's what I mean about holding a state of being. And the interesting thing for me was that's where my self-help journey began. I started to buy books because I thought there was something wrong with me. I couldn't understand why I wasn't fitting into this environment, why I found it challenging, why I couldn't understand why people were being nasty to one another, why people were bitching and backstabbing. And I thought I had to make myself stronger. I thought I had to fit into that world. So I started to read a lot of self-help books. And those self-help books did help. They helped me understand myself a lot more. Well, the ones that I read, because I had a habit of buying self-help books, flicking through them. And, maybe I thought there was some kind of magical power that if you just, bought them and held them, that you would, by osmosis, you would understand what's going on. In conversations with so many of my friends, I think a lot of us felt that way. If you just bought them, something would happen. So I'm buying these self-help books and my life is changing. I am beginning to understand me a bit more. I'm beginning to understand the corporate environment a bit more. But I still was always looking for a different feeling. I wasn't enjoying the feeling that I was living in because I was still paying attention to the thoughts that were flying through my head. I still thought they were fact. I still thought they meant something. I still thought these thoughts were who I was. I didn't understand at that point that that wasn't true. And then I met my husband and we met and married within about 6 months. And it's really interesting how there are parts in your life where you don't recognise it, but you're actually living from mind. And what I mean by living from mind is you're being guided, your mind quietens down and you just know, that whatever you're doing is right, and you can't articulate why you just know it's a really, really deep feeling. So Jenny and I met and married within about 5.5 months, and we've been married now for about 27, 28 years. And I can honestly say I love that guy more now than the day I married him, and I loved him to bits way, way, way back then. And we have 3 daughters, and one of my funny stories I love to tell is, so here's me. I've been reading self-help books for about 8 or 9 years, and I'm getting better. I'm getting better slowly. I'm a slow learner. And we love to take our kids to the bookshop on a Saturday morning because you could get a coffee and the kids could get a drink and they could read a book. And so when my kids were about 6, 4 and 2, I remember being in the bookshop with Jerry, my husband, and our 3 daughters. And my husband asking our daughters, "Where's your mum?" And the girls turning round to their dad and saying, "At 6, 4 and 2, mum's in the self-help section." And they still to this day rip me up about that, that's kind of where I lived. And I couple of weeks ago, they were home and they were saying things like, yeah, remember when mum, you know, would take us and we would be in the self-help section and look at the books. Paul McKenna can help her get thin. Paul McKenna can help her sleep. Paul McKenna can help her make money. Paul McKenna this, Paul McKenna that. And it got to the stage that my husband could actually emulate Paul McKenna's hypnotic voice. And so if I was talking too much, he'd go 99, 98, 97. And I would find myself dropping into this sort of hypnotic state. I was so conditioned by the self-help books. You know, and I'm not knocking self-help. I'm not knocking it, because I think there's truth in there for everybody. There is absolute truth in there for everyone. But when I came across this understanding of the principles, even although I trained as an NLP trainer, practitioner, even although I trained as a hypnotherapist, all part of my journey to help me become, you know, the person that I am now and to help me settle into life. When I came across this understanding of the principles, I went from searching to knowing. So that search was completely off. There was nothing to look outside of myself for. And that's what I had innocently been doing for about 25 years of my life. Looking outside of myself to find the answers completely innocently. And this is what I see with self-help. From a very, very young early age, we're taught that, or conditioned to think that we can improve ourselves from the outside in. That there is an I, a me, that needs to be improved. You know, this idea that, you know, Jacquie needs to be slimmer, Jacquie needs to have red hair, Jacquie needs to have, you know, a tighter butt, Jacquie needs to have perkier boobs, you know, Jacquie needs to be kind, Jacquie needs to be this. And so that conditioning, most of it is really quite innocent. You know, it's from our peer group, it's from our parents, it's from the media. And some of it is not so innocent. Some of it is really, you know, it's quite frightening the way we can be conditioned innocently. But all of that is telling us that there is an I that isn't perfect, that there is a you or an I or a me that is broken, that needs to be fixed, that there is this homogenous version of humanity where we're all meant to look the same and be the same and dress the same and act the same and have the same visions and goals for our life. For example, you're meant to go to university, you're meant to get a job, and you know, I know you've all heard from my mentee Mia about that and her journey. And what this understanding has shown me is that me, that I thought I was, is a made-up story. A beautiful, innocent, made-up story of who I thought I should be and who other people think I should be as well. And that's always from the outside in. And it's egoic, it's an ego identity. But it's not truth. Because if it was truth, it would be fixed. It would always be the same. But it isn't, because it constantly changes. Because the me that I was when I was 10 isn't the me I was when I was 21, isn't the me I was when I was 30, isn't the me I am now. Because my story keeps changing. It changes every time I learn a lesson. It changes every time I have an experience. It changes every time I had a child. It changes every time somebody died in my family. It changes every time I have conversations like this. I get to see something new, something fresh, something wonderful about the world. It just doesn't stay the same. So how can I bet my existence on something that is built on quicksand? It's not solid. It's always going to change. And if it's always going to change, there's no point investing in it. The understanding of the principles taught me that I am both a spiritual being, an essence, a soul, a spark, an energy, but I'm also this human form. And I often say it's my meat sack because that's what it is. It's just this human cloth that I have around me. And I know that for sure because I have been with people when they die. That life force just disappears. But the humanness is left. So you see the impermanence of the story. Because the story ends at that point. But that spark, that energy, it comes from nothing. It comes into form and then it goes back into nothing. So deep inside all of us, there's this intelligence, this beautiful energy that is always calm and it's always kind and it's always loving. And what I love about it is it just doesn't have an opinion about how I'm showing up. Doesn't care. It's kind of like, and part of the consciousness of life, you know, this universal intelligence that's behind life. You know, the weather doesn't care if it's raining. The weather doesn't care if the sun is shining. It's all part of the same intelligence. So knowing that, no matter how chaotic my personal thinking might be, I know that there's this part of me that's always still and it's always quiet. And it doesn't care that I've gone off in one because it knows that I'll come back to that same space. And I often talk about that being like a storm, like a tornado. And Sid Banks, who first articulated this understanding, wrote about this in The Missing Link. And this is kind of the metaphor that came to my mind when I read part of this. And he's talking about personal thinking and impersonal thinking. And I'm just going to explain it through this kind of metaphor because we all have thoughts that just don't bother us. They fly in our head and they fly out and nobody cares. And then we have thoughts that come in and we give them meaning. We think they mean something. So if I can invite you guys to think about a tornado, okay? And in the eye of a tornado, the eye of a storm is always quiet. It's always still. There's no debris. There's nothing in the middle of that storm. It's always quiet and still and empty. To me, that's our impersonal thinking. That's our soul. That's our energy. That's our spark. And then the wall of a storm, as it goes through, you know, its path, just like as we go through life, this tornado picks up shit. It picks up crap. It picks up houses and cars and, unfortunately, animals and all sorts of stuff as well, and trees and plants and you name it. And it's spinning it around and it's spinning it around and it's spinning it around. Always in the centre, there's a calmness. Always in the centre, in the eye of the storm, there's stillness. To me, that wall of the storm is like my personal thinking. Every human being, and I'd love to know who did this, but somebody counted that we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, okay? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't pay attention to all of those because I'd be exhausted. Yet somehow, as a human being, there are certain thoughts that I pick up on, okay? So my thoughts, these 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, are just like the eye of that, the wall of that storm. And they're constantly going round and round and round and round and round. That's just what they do. but I only focus on certain ones. And what I know to be true is that most of my repetitive thoughts are on repeat. So it'll be the same ones coming to visit me all the time. And I am not frightened by that. I love that because that gives me an opportunity to see something new, to see something fresh. Life is there to help us grow and evolve as human beings. That's the whole purpose of being here, is to learn and grow and experience life, not to be afraid of our experiences, but to see it just as an experience. And, some experiences are incredibly yucky. So, they're just not nice. They're not nice to go through. I'm not saying we all want to live in Disneyland. I'm saying that sometimes we have to have lessons that make us feel really deeply into our human experience. But we can come out of that with a new learning, with a new understanding, with a new appreciation. It's like I've been talking about earlier on, sort of when you see someone take their last breath, and it's, if it's a loved one, it's not a particularly nice experience, even if you know that that person is terribly ill and, it's the best thing for them. It's not a nice experience to go through. But at the same time, that helps us grow as human beings because we've experienced death. So then we begin to understand the circle of life. We begin to understand the impermanence of life. We begin to understand that everything that's composed eventually decomposes. We're not here. We're not built to last forever. And that's why this understanding has brought me this experience of, oh my God, while I'm here, I'm going to have this amazing experience. I'm just going to have the ride of my life, skid into my grave thinking, what a ride. Enjoying every single moment of it that I can. Because this understanding has taught me that just as my human life is impermanent, I'm not going to last forever. That's okay. Not bothered about it, just the way it is. I also feel that way about thought. Thought is impermanent. So even if a thought comes into your mind, the thing is, all thought is transient. It comes and it goes. And I'm sure many people have spoken about this. It's kind of like the weather. I live in Scotland. I'm lucky enough to be in LA at the moment. But see, when you live in Scotland, you can see 4 seasons in 10 minutes. 1 minute it's raining, 1 minute it's cloudy, 1 minute it's sunny, and then, oh my God, all of a sudden there's snow. So you see the impermanence of weather, and thought is exactly the same. It's impermanent. It moves. It passes through. You can have a thought that doesn't feel good. And I guarantee it'll not be with you 24/7 for all of your life. It's going to pop in and pop out and pop in and pop out. That's just the nature of thought. Thought is also neutral. Okay? It's a neutral energy. It doesn't mean anything until we give it meaning. And a lot of people, when I talk to them, and I talk about, and Sid speaks about this as well, the brain and the mind are completely different. Our brains are biological, they're machines, and our mind is spiritual, and nobody knows where our thoughts come from. Our brains are there to retrieve information and to store information. That's what they're there for. They're there to help us look after the equilibrium of our bodies. So if our CO2 rises in our body, something will kick in and we'll take in more oxygen, whether it's where we take a yawn, we take a big deep breath in, and we take a yawn, and all of a sudden we start to sort that equilibrium within our body. We are being breathed. We are not breathing. We are being breathed. Just like we are being lived. Universe, we are being lived. Life flows through us. So I guess what I'm pointing to is we can think that we're in control, but we're not. We're absolutely not. So the minute that a thought flies into your head and you think you can change it, control it, stop it, you're onto hiding for nothing, because all you're doing is you're putting fuel on the fire. And that's your awareness, that's your attention. And you know, the more that you put fuel on a fire, the more the fire lights up. The natural order of things is for that thought just to flow through. And you know as well, when you don't put fuel on a fire, it dies out. Now, I'm not pointing to a doing here, I'm pointing to a noticing. Okay, there's no practice, nothing like that. It's just noticing the thoughts that come through your mind every single day. You'll notice that most of them are on repeat. They're similar thoughts. Noticing how you respond to them. Sometimes we just get a feeling in our body that alerts us, because we're always living in the feeling of our thinking. So if you have a thought that you're feeling anxiety in your body, kind of like me, when I felt shy, I would feel shy. But I didn't know I was feeling shy. It wasn't like, oh, I'm shy. It was like, oh, you know, where I'd blush and I didn't really want to speak to people, and my body would be kind of, you know, sort of like this. We're given these indicators all the time about where our level of thinking is in each and every moment. And the more that I've settled into this understanding, the more that I recognise that, you know, I'm human and I'm going to fluctuate throughout the day. My mood's going to fluctuate. It's just what it does. Sometimes I am loud and gregarious. Sometimes I am a bitch. Sometimes I'm grumpy. Sometimes I'm moody. But because I know that I'm living through that experience, I don't need to do anything with it. You know, I don't need to hit out at anybody. I don't need to be a bitch. I know that I'm only ever living in the feeling of my thinking. And if I'm living in the feeling of my thinking, I'm being given information. And it might be that I need to drink something. It might be I need to eat something. I might be hypoglycemic. That always has an impact on me. You know, I'm human. It's kind of like, you think about your car. If you put if you put diesel in a petrol engine, it's going to stall. Okay, you're going to need a new engine if you keep driving with it. It's kind of like, I have an allergy to shellfish. I eat shellfish. I'm going to have an allergic response. Likewise, I'm a human being. My brain is 95% composed of fluid. If I don't have enough fluid in my brain, I'm going to have a lower state of consciousness, a lower state of awareness. If I drink drinks that are full of sugar, I'm hyper and then I crash. If I drink too much gin, I get friendly. You know, it's recognizing your humanness within your human experience. And this is why this understanding is so beautiful, because you're your own living experiment of who you are. And that's why I talk about this understanding being beyond self-help, because beyond the self-help was, or just self-help was somebody telling me what I had to do to make myself better, to fix myself. And what I see with myself and with my clients is true change comes from within. It comes from insight. And my job as a teacher and a mentor and a facilitator and a coach is to help facilitate those insights in other people. Not to teach, but to help them find what is true for them. That's why this understanding is different, because when you see something for yourself, it never leaves you. There's nothing to remember. There's nothing to fix. There's just this gorgeous feeling of something's changed. And sometimes you get a glimpse of that insight. And my advice to anybody listening is not to chase it. Don't try and figure it out. Just let it do what it's going to do and let it surprise you. And sometimes you get this kind of visceral feeling in your body, like you know something's changed, but you're not quite sure what has changed. And then life will show you. It will teach you what has changed, which is, it's such fun. I had an experience of that about 5 years ago, and we were on a family holiday, and I had always had a fear of heights and a fear of deep water. And we had gone on holiday, and I had broken my foot about 6 weeks previously. So I had a moon boot and crutches on. And while we were in Malta, I thought it would be beautiful to go on a boat cruise around the little islands with my family. And we booked that. And then I heard you could go in a speedboat, and I thought this would be wonderful. So in my mind, I'm like, yes, there'll be a marina and there'll be a jetty, and I'll just hobble off with my moon boot and my crutches, and then I'll go down the jetty and I'll step into this gorgeous little boat, and it'll all be okay. You know, it'll be absolutely fine. But at the back of my mind was this, oh, you know, what if it's deep? What if it's this? What if it's that? And so it got to the point that we got to a little island where we're going to get off the big boat and onto the little boat. And there was no jetty. There was no marina. And the guy was down in the little boat down below, and it was about a 4 foot jump onto a boat that was rocking. And apparently, without thinking about anything, Anne, I jumped in without my crutches into the boat with my moon boot. And I looked up at my husband and my daughters, and they were all like, something had changed. I didn't know anything about it. But here was this woman with this fear of heights who wouldn't go near the edge of anything, Anne. Not even a veranda or a balcony. Wouldn't go near it. And, you know, with a banister, it was like, no. So, I mean, even sort of the side of a mountain, forget it, wasn't happening. All of a sudden, here was me doing something completely different. And this is what I love about this understanding. It gives us the opportunity for the stories that we have in our brain, the memories that have been laid down in our brain innocently as we've experienced life, to change all by themselves without us having to do anything at all. So there's this gorgeous hope that, like I was speaking about earlier, this ego identity, this I that who we think we are, isn't who we are. We are so much more than that. We are this gorgeous, infinite, loving, incredible energy. And as human beings, we're only using this tiny part of our brain to experience life. And this understanding teaches you to go deeper, to use wisdom, to use intuition, or have it use you, so that you can have this completely different experience of life. So to me, way beyond self-help, way beyond anything I learned, way beyond my years holding books, not reading them, reading some of them, and sitting in coffee shops. I have learned something, but this understanding is just taking it to a completely different level.
Well, the biggest thing for me is everybody that I've interviewed like this, or that I've had on presenting and talking, all are sitting here very confident and bubbly and such a different person from the way that they're describing that they used to be. So if people don't see anything else, they have to see that this happens with everybody, and nobody did anything. It's all through what you said. It's all just through understanding how life really works, how our experience really works. And I did read all the self-help books, and it still didn't make any difference. I read them all. And you would have been wasting your time. No, you know, as you say, that there's something in them. There is something in them, but not this understanding of where it's all coming from in the first place, and doing all of those techniques just took so much time and so much energy.
Yeah.
And this doesn't at all. It's just fun. Yeah.
It is. It's such a graceful and gentle way to live life, Anne, isn't it? You know, sort of compared to what we lived before. You know, people say to me, oh, but it's an age thing. You know, you've experienced a lot of life. This is an age thing. And I'm like, have you met Mia, my mentee? Have you met my daughters? Have you met any of the young kids that I work with? I'm blown away by their wisdom.
And I know plenty of people. Yeah, I know plenty of people who are older who are still very anxious and still not seeing anything any differently. So it's definitely not age. Yeah.
No, definitely not age related. So there's hope for all of us. And you know, the other thing I love about this, Anne, is you don't need to have a certificate. You know, you don't need to do a 10-year course. You don't need to go to university. You don't need to, you know, it's there. You don't have to be dead clever. In fact, you know, the less academic you are, the more you're going to hear it, in fact.
And also it's not making people all the same, which is partly what I felt about the self-help stuff. Is you should be feeling this, and you should be doing that, and you should all be grateful all the time, and you should all be. Whereas now everybody, although I said everybody's bubbly, and so everybody's individual, everybody's so different, and are just themselves, rather than having to be a certain way and having to do it a certain way. It's just like, yeah. And that's so much more relaxing and more fun. And
absolutely. And everybody shares differently. And that's what's gorgeous as well, is that we all get to show up as the unique expression that we all are. No competition, no comparison, just be this gorgeous expression of you.
Yeah. And it's lovely because I've had people on who've been like you, who've known about it for a long time, and some people who've known about it a very short time, like Mia. And it's just lovely hearing the different ways that people have seen it and experienced it, and the enthusiasm for it, though, however long it's been. Yeah.
I think, Anne, you know, different people hear different people, and the more teachers we have out there across the board, male, female, young, old, we all have our unique story. But not only do we all have our unique story, we all have our own unique way of sharing it. We all have our own words, our own descriptions, our own details. So different people are going to hear different things from all of us. And some people teach quite intellectually, and some people teach, you know, sort of spiritually. And it's just, find who resonates with you.
Yes. So we will have, there'll be a link underneath this video, so that if people would like to find out more about you, Jacquie, and get in touch with you, they can do that. Mm-hmm. And also, if they want to, they can just post questions and comments underneath the video, and I can hand those on to you, get you to have a look at those. That's happens sometimes too. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, as I say, they can get in touch with you and find out more about you through the link underneath the video.
That's great, Anne. And as you know, I've got my podcast, Unashamedly Human, and I write my blogs and stuff. So please, you know, take a wee listen. And they're quite a laugh. Some of these.
They are, yes, yes, and and there are links to all of those things. So all of that, they can come and learn all about you there. So thanks so much, Jacquie, for coming. That's been really, really good, really lovely.
Thank you for asking me, Anne. I love what you're doing. This is a wonderful opportunity for humanity. I appreciate you and honour what you're creating here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. See you again soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye then.